So out walking this week, I decided to take the forest path I don't normally take and kind of wound my way around to, well, past a little, what I call a little house on the prairie, which is basically a shack that some folks built, likely because they are homeless and have since abandoned because some other people came by and smashed it. And along the way I decided to take the train tracks, and then and as I got up on the tracks, like, there was just all these cardinals everywhere. Like, there were so many of them, and you could see them more easily because all the leaves have fallen and it's more just kind of bare thicket type underbrush all by the creek. And there was just this one that was just kind of like embedded in the depths of a thicket, and it's just this little like bright pocket of red in the midst of this dense matrix of branches that were just all like this, shades of gray, and really striking. And so I managed to get a few photographs with my phone, which are not the best quality, but still kind of like that artistic abstraction of it, and then a short video. And so I went to like name it, and I was like, well, what should I name it? I'm like, well, I'll just Cardinal in the thicket. Just call it what it is. And now I just love that name. So I'll probably keep slapping it on different things. Like, just call it Cardinal in the thicket. Yeah, so anyway, one of my artistic highlights of the week. My cat is on steroids because he's sick with kind of a really unfortunate combination of things, and probably doesn't have that much longer for the world. But he came up earlier and just like laid at my feet so I would pet him, and now he's just laying right there, and he may again beg for my attention because now he knows that I'll like pet him for very long periods of time, because there's only so much time. Tra-la-la. These are my mundane experiments and Saturday night chatting and figuring out where to set the frame. Where should I set the frame? Should it be close? Should it be far? Should it be there? Should it be thar? What say you? I got this raspberry ale tonight that I thought I would like a lot, but I actually don't like it that much. I mean, it's okay for a fruit beer, but it's a lot more sour than I thought it was going to be. I mean, I probably should have looked it up first before I committed to a whole pack of 6 of them. I have a feeling I'll have like raspberry ale available to guests now, whenever that happens again, having guests. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Steve. I actually don't use this framing as often. I just kind of stumbled upon this framing last week or the week before, not too long ago, and I really like it. So if I could offer you a raspberry ale, I would, because I've got plenty of them that I probably won't drink, but I'm drinking them because that's, well, I mean, I guess because I'd like to give beer a fair chance before I say no. I was also experimenting with making Boilermakers, so I had this beer barrel bourbon from a brewery that usually makes beer, and it's pretty good actually, but not so good just straight. Like, you kind of have to, like, it's good, it's more of a mixing whiskey, and discovered that it's actually really good with mixing with like creamy, like cream soda or like any kind of like creaminess, even orange juice, and it kind of like just embellishes the creaminess. So I tried it with this raspberry ale earlier, and I think it made the beer better, but it's not exactly something that I would stock again. Yeah, it's really specific. Like, you have to like raspberry for it to take. And I like raspberry, but I just don't. I think it's just too sour for me. But I'm gonna drink it anyway because I already opened it. So. Yeah, but not good for Boilermakers either. So that's word of warning. Which is kind of a, it's been a little bit of an adventure for me to discover that I actually like Boilermakers, which is just whiskey and beer. Whether you chase the whiskey with the beer or just combine the two, which is actually pretty good if you get the ratio right. So that's my, I guess that's my drink of the week. I did happen upon some writing that I did about 3 years ago, and I talked about, like, there is this cocktail that I wanted to make that I hadn't invented it yet, but tequila is very good. I actually have a few things to say about tequila too, but yeah, so I was going to invent this cocktail, but I was never quite sure like what I wanted to put in it, and then the other day I realized that grapefruit juice, just a dash, is part of the recipe, even though I still don't quite know what the recipe is. Maybe there's tequila in it, actually. Now that I think about it. But I came across a recipe for the daiquiri that Hemingway used to like and drink all the time, and I thought, oh, actually maybe I'm just going to kind of riff off of this Hemingway daiquiri to make this new drink. So I have some experiments in order, probably over the next several weeks as the holidays kind of unfold and there's more festive things to do. Yeah, well, tequila, you know what, actually, and here's the thing, tequila will be increasingly in short supply because that's one of the things that climate change will impact is the ingredients to make tequila. So at some point, buy your tequila now. No habla español. Sorry. But, hola. Some, you know, like a little bit. Unfortunately, I should know more by now, but I don't, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think there's still some time, but like, watch the prices. Watch the prices, because I actually did notice there is, some of the top shelf tequilas went up just a little bit recently, and I was just like, oh god. Like, but I haven't made my tequila run just yet, but I plan to at some point, just have my own like stash and not worry about it so much. Well then, you're in luck. Yeah, and then I started reading about the history of rum, and which is really interesting, and there's actually like, you know, some connoisseurs will go like seek out very, very old rums, like rum from New England, like several hundred years ago now, and like Cuban and Puerto Rican, Cuban, yeah, Puerto Rican too, and really like a lot of the islands, and really just fascinating history, and then I think that's what it is. That's just going to be too warm for agave to grow properly, and then there's just not going to be, like, it just won't be easy to make, or it'll be more costly to make, and so then the prices are going to go up, and it'll be like harder to make larger amounts of it. I don't know when, but it's one of the forecasted impacted goods out there, which is a little sad because tequila is such an amazing, I mean, it's really kind of, I mean, an amazing, kind of like food. It's almost like food. So it makes me a little bit sad, but I don't drink it very often. When I do, it's, you know, it's such an intense flavor. I just kind of sip it. But it used to be, and what I just read in the History of Rum book, which is like the history of the New World and 10 cocktails, is that it used to be that you would lick the salt and then take and then suck on the lime and then take a swig of tequila, and somewhere along the way, like, it got reversed to like salt, tequila, and then lime, and which never really quite made sense to me. But I guess it depends on how like purely you want to taste the tequila. Yeah, it could happen. Like, next thing you know, that's gonna be like the latest local trend is growing agave, and distilleries are gonna be like, yep, we're making our own tequila now. Yeah. So, and then my son started reading Hunter S. Thompson, or he was reading Vonnegut, and then Vonnegut was talking about Hunter S. Thompson, and so he asked me to order him some books from Hunter S. Thompson, and then I remembered that he has one called The Rum Diary, and I was like, oh, like, great, like I can keep like reading about rum for a little while longer, because I just finished the other book. And so this like marriage between literature and literary arts and like the history of liquors is really quite an interesting one. So it's been, I guess, one of my highlights of 2020, of which there are a few. In the midst of all this chaos, there are a few. Yeah, well, I mean, if you get good tequilas, you don't really need the salt and the lime. Like, that's kind of the mark of a good tequila. You should read Vonnegut. I can't imagine anyone not liking Kurt Vonnegut's stories. It's just hard for me to imagine that someone would not like his writing. It's just one of the best authors I think I've ever come across in my life. Yes, I think he did. Yeah, Galapagos. I have not read that one, but I'm pretty sure that's one of his titles. Yeah. Yes. It's just, yeah. He wrote another one called, like, it's really weird, like, Wampeter's Foma and Grand Falloons, and it's basically like him talking about his writing and talking about other authors, and that's the one that my son read. And so he was like telling me about Tolstoy and Hunter S. Thompson, which for some reason I have a hard time remembering that Hunter S. Thompson is actually an author. Sorry. Sorry, Hunter. But and I don't think that I've read enough of his stuff. But I did see the movie The Rum Diary, and that I liked a lot. That was good. Yeah, I highly recommend reading any Vonnegut works that interest you. Definitely read them. Oh, that was the cool thing that my son told me, is that that there are 4 very obscure works that are published by Vonnegut somewhere out in the probably the magazine stratosphere that aren't really cataloged. They're just kind of like out there, and he alludes to them in the Wampeter's book, but he doesn't say where they are. So it's just kind of like this neat little scavenger hunt for folks that are really interested in reading all of his stuff. So there's 4, probably like little short stories published in some magazine in the 50s or something. Actually, I'm not even sure when did he start writing. Oh, he was old though. He was like almost, I don't know, like almost 90, I think, when he passed away. And I have so much to say about Vonnegut. And there's a whole museum dedicated to him in Indianapolis, which is where he's from, which is also cool. So, yeah, I must be a fan. I must be a fan. But then the other thing that I learned I guess this is kind of like one of my literary notes chats, is he was older than Hunter S. Thompson, and then outlived him by a couple of years, I think, too. But it's just interesting, like, thinking about the different things that people wrote while, you know, like, in, you know, like, as part of a broader literary community and a broader, like, cultural trend. And, yeah, yep, there's a whole museum dedicated to Kurt Vonnegut in Indianapolis, where he's from. Which I have not been there. I would like to go there at some point, but it's pretty... Yeah, it's, yep, it's a pretty neat little cultural gem. And so I was going to say something else, but I forgot already. Yeah, so oh, who knows? Do a lot of reading. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So then I started reading Patti Smith a few years ago. I started with M Train, which is a great book, and she talks a bit about living in the Rockaways in that book before and after the hurricanes hit, I believe. And then I started reading Year of the Monkey, which is one of her latest publications. And the Year of the Monkey was actually 2016, so she's writing about that year, and that was like a pretty meaningful year for me too. And so it's really interesting to read someone else's story about that year, or like think about like how it relates to my own year. So I have found that reading memoirs is a really good way to not feel so alone and isolated in the world, especially now as we're all like hunkering down. Like, it's, I don't know, feels like I think we all like need to get into our bunkers or something. Yes, Patti Smith, the singer, she's also a writer. She's a very prolific writer, poet, and she's got like, I don't know, like probably like 5 or 6 memoirs actually. She kind of writes like creative, yeah, I guess they're all kind of memoirs really, of various parts of her life. And I found her stuff to be really relatable, and her style of writing is very dreamy, and it kind of like nudges you out of your sense of normalcy, I guess. It just kind of captures you. It's like getting into a canoe and then just kind of like going down a stream and just like letting the stream guide the canoe for the most part. I mean, obviously you don't want to like run into a tree. But that's kind of like how her writing is, and it's really this like a healing salve. Oh yeah, you should definitely read some memoirs. Just pick somebody that you want to know more about and read it. And yeah, so I think that was one of the first ones that I read, and I was like, oh, like memoirs are pretty cool, because then you kind of get to know somebody in the world in a real way, because they're telling you about their life and you can relate to it or not. I mean, you know, however, whatever the case may be. And it's just another way to like validate being human in the world when you can't necessarily get to know people in real life. And I have even read a hockey player's memoir, which was really interesting, and I can't remember his name right now, but he was like a really controversial, contentious, get into trouble kind of hockey player for the Red Wings for a good long stretch. And I'm totally blanking on his name right now, but he was controversial because some of his like shit-talking tactics were kind of were over the line. They were totally over the top. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yep, pick something, yeah, like exactly, like pick somebody that you want, somebody or a period of history, or, you know, something that you want to know more about, and then just find whatever is out there about that person. It's really such a rewarding, it's really such a rewarding type of reading to do. And then one of the other ones I'm reading right now is a biography of Sylvia Plath, and like a very specific year in her life when she was in New York City in 1953 and working for Mademoiselle. I can talk, for a magazine. And she was primarily an editor in that magazine for the summer, but really wanted to be a fashion editor, and so it like talks about the kind of the tension between what she was doing and what she really wanted to be doing, what she was could have been very talented at doing, and just kind of how some of that like discontent started to filter and factor into other areas of her life. But it's but what I particularly like about it is that a lot of it will like match up with some of the other reading that I'm doing about like culture and daiquiris, for that matter, and when daiquiris were really popular in the 50s, and then just the style of the writing itself is like, because it's a biography, so they're just kind of like trying to present the information that they have, and so the chapters can sometimes be really short, and then they're kind of like interspersed with these little like snippets of information, and so the style of writing that particular book lends well to just being able to read very short passages, like for like I could pick it up for 5 minutes and like read a chapter, and I'm like, oh okay, it's like a nice like easy way to feel like I accomplished something. Oh yeah. Yeah, see, that's, and then you could like, so then you like, then when you're reading about FDR, you can like read about what was, like how were they trying to, you know, deal with it, and like what was their thinking, and like how were they trying to figure out what, you know, what to do. Like it's actually an excellent thing to read right now. Yeah, I don't, for some reason, I don't know that I every time I read about daiquiris, people are like, oh, they're so good, but I don't know that I've actually had one. Or if I have, I'm sure that I have, but I don't really remember it, so it must not have been that good. So, yeah, it's definitely a favorite. And then the thing about daiquiris is, from what I've been reading, is that usually they're made at this point usually with like machines that just make them kind of like almost like slushies in a way, and they lose a lot of their charm and potential than when like a bartender makes it like more craft approach, because the way that you make it needs to be the right amount of chill, otherwise you just start to lose the flavor because it's too cold. Yeah, definitely a sweet, I think it's definitely a very sweet drink. I have been surprised to find that I don't like, I like a limit to my sweetness in drinks, and for the longest time I think that I like fell into like this belief of this like stereotypical belief that I would like sweet drinks just because, I don't know why, but I don't necessarily. I like them occasionally, but I discovered last year that I really like stout beer. I had no idea. I was working at this bar for a few months, and you know, one of the perks was we could get free shift beers, and so I would sample, and it was a craft beer bar, so it was like all kinds of like really good beers, and so I just tried everything, like no holds barred, like I just tried it all, like whether I thought I would like it or not, I was just gonna try it just to see, and I discovered I really like stouts and I really like strong beers. And the other thing that I learned in that endeavor is that kind of my threshold, because my like alcohol tolerance is not that much, like it doesn't take that much for me to feel kind of like tipsy from it, and from there it's like, it's, if I'm not like cognizant of how much I'm drinking or the pace, that it's like really easy for me to get intoxicated. And so what I learned with like my one beer like experiments is that 7% alcohol volume is like kind of like my, like the bridge. Like if it's 7% ABV, then like that's like actually kind of my favorite like alcohol percentage, because it's like very efficient. Like you get a nice like buzz from the beer, but it's not like too much. Anything over 7%, like anything at like 7.9 and above, is like drink slow. And then there was another one that I tried that was like 14%, I think. And that was absurd. That was like drinking bourbon almost. And then the other one that kind of like made me realize that you gotta just really be careful with 10% ABV is I think the Mountain Brown. So yeah, definitely like a lot of beer sampling last year, and I think that's actually how I got this like little beer gut that I have now. I'm trying to like walk off every day, but what do you do? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like dangerous almost. Like it's almost like it definitely needs to come with like strong labeling. Like you are drinking a 14% beer. Like that's like I mean that's stronger than wine. And yeah, there was some folks who would be like, wow, like you shouldn't even be selling this in more. And then we would sell it was like a 10-ounce serving instead of like a 16. It wasn't a pint, it was 10 ounces. But even that was like 10 ounces of a beer that strong is like, you should probably just share it with somebody. Yeah, so it makes me, kind of wonder. Oh yeah, I used to like Killian's a lot, like in my 20s. Like what is that? Like the red ales. I do like red ales still. And then of course IPAs have like stormed the scene. Actually, usually don't like IPAs. It has to be like a really specific IPA for me to like it. Another thing I learned in all that beer sampling. Yeah, I've been kind of like making up for lost time a little bit. Like I didn't drink basically at all for years and years, just because there wasn't really any time or space for it in my life. And now as I've started to cook more and be more adventurous with my cooking, I've also been more adventurous with like making cocktails and like just doing different kinds of experimental things with food and drink. And it's been fun. It's definitely like another form of creative fulfillment, really, being creative with food and drink. So yeah, but of course I'm like, gosh, maybe I should not drink any more beer. Cheers. So you've become a little what? A little. You're probably responding to something that I said, but I've already forgotten what I said. So if you didn't catch the short little story that I shared at the beginning, the Cardinal in the Thicket. The Cardinal in the Thicket was actually was actually a cardinal in the thicket a few days ago when I was out walking, and I took the train tracks and like got up on the. Oh yeah, like that's definitely true of the town where I live. That's people's preferred modes. That's actually I actually don't prefer that mode because it makes me spacey. I'm already spacey. More spacey. So I was walking this forest trail and I decided to go up on the train tracks, and I get up on the train tracks and I look around and like there's just cardinals everywhere. Like so many. And I like just thought, gosh, like they're like totally getting ready for the winter. But also like a lot of the other birds have, migrated out by now. So it's like easier to notice lots of cardinals too, I think. And but you can also really see them because they're they're just this bright red color, and like all the leaves have now fallen, so you can spot them much easier. And so there's all this underbrush and Yeah, and there's just this one cardinal that just kind of caught my eye. It was like in this dead center of this short tree, this really dense thicket, and I took a few photographs, and then he was like there long enough for me to actually take a short video. So I got this cool little companion set of a few photographs and a like a 20-second video of this cardinal in the thicket. And when I went to name the photos in the video, I was like, well, what do I call this? I'm like, well, it's a cardinal in the thicket, so. And that's how I came to name this episode. Because I like that phrase. It's just a neat phrase. Yes, well, as you can see, that I am kind of, free flow of consciousness. Sometimes, perhaps often, people ask me if I haven't already, if I'm not high. Just because I'm tra-la-la all the time, but that's just my sense of free flow. And I think that as a poet, I've learned that it's easier to write poetry if I just let my mind kind of relax into a rhythm. Just let kind of the poetry spill forth. And when I really let that happen, and you have to kind of like practice it too. Like you can't just leap into it. Like you got to kind of allow it quite often. And when I do, like I can get at some pretty satisfying poetry, which I have to remind myself actually periodically that is usually when I feel the most grounded and balanced, is when I have a good outlet for poetic flow. Yeah, I noticed there was a couple of blue jays too that were like, I don't know, like I was just really noticing the colors were just really, really bright and vivid, and maybe it was just the backdrop of all the grayscale from the branches and all the leaves that now, kind of dropped, and so you could just, that made the colors of the birds pop out. But yeah, birds bring a certain sense of peace. Yeah, the blue jay though, actually I'm not even sure if it was a blue jay. It looked a lot like a blue jay, but I think it was something else. I don't know what. And then I have found myself taking care of my son's cockatiels more often than I ever expected, which I've never kept birds. I've never had pet birds. I've never lived in a house that had pet birds. I visited a friend who has pet birds. She has parrots. And that was how I actually first became familiar with having birds in a house, which seems weird. And then my son got 2 cockatiels, and now I take care of cockatiels, which I did not expect that at all. So now I'm like Googling how to take care of cockatiels every so often. Like, oh, what do I do if they grind their beak? What do I do if they make that noise? Oh, what do I do if they fly up on the top of the curtain and won't come down? Yeah, he had a parakeet for a brief couple of months, I think, and then he just disappeared one day. And that parakeet was an escape artist too. Like we had a hard time keeping him in his cage. He would find ways to open the bird cage doors. And then one day he was just gone. And so I'm pretty certain that he escaped off of the balcony door when we weren't looking. I like having cockatiels. They're really, actually, I like having birds. After I stayed with my friend in New York City, and she had like, I think 3 or 4 parrots at the time. And I got accustomed to birds, like living with birds. I realized how charming and just satisfying it can be to have birds around. And so, I don't know if I like cockatiels. I think I like parrots probably better than cockatiels, just because, or maybe it's just these 2 particular birds aren't as friendly as the parrots that I got to know. Like I can't handle them. Like they basically like hiss at me if I get too close. So it's a little bit I mean, it's fine most of the time, but if I have to handle them, it's going to be a real, like, it's going to be a challenge, especially since I don't really have any experience taking care of birds, so. Yeah, I guess cockatiels do too. I don't know how much longer or how, I don't know how they compare, but yeah, well, so I wasn't expecting to make a commitment to birds, but it seems like I am becoming the steward of these birds. Much like I once expected my own mother to become the steward of one of my dogs. When I realized I didn't want to keep the dog, but she did. And so now I'm kind of becoming the steward of my son's birds, and I'm thinking, oh my god, like these birds are going to last a very long time. Like, well, I guess they're moving with me. Oh, that will be fun, figuring out how to move birds. But I like the chirps. That they're friendly. It's like it's nice to have the company. I guess it's particularly nice to have the company in this year, specifically. Oh my gosh! Wow. That's overwhelming. You have to make like plans for what happens to your parrot if you get I would have to be like, if I got a parrot now, I'd be like, well, and this is who the parrot will go to when I pass away. Like, I mean that's that's intense. Like, I thought getting a dog was a commitment. Jeez. That's something else altogether. Huh. Yeah, well, you know, it's my whole life, like, it's not been that hard for me to end up with pets, like whether I wanted them there or not. Like it just kind of happens that I have pets. Sometimes by choice, sometimes they just kind of like become a steward of an animal, a stray, or somebody else doesn't want them, or you know, something happens and I have more pets. And I'm like waiting for the day when I just don't have any pets, but I don't think that has happened since I like in almost like 25 years, which is a really long time to always have a pet. And at some point, I'm hoping that I can like just like take a break. Like, let's get a little breather from this and travel and not worry about who's going to take care of my dog or my cat or my bird or my fish. Oh my gosh, that's a long time for a cat too. That's my cat is 13 now. They're twins essentially. They're brother and sister from the same litter, and they're both like pure white cats. They're very, very pretty, very like strikingly beautiful, which is how I ended up with two, because they were the only two like that in the whole litter. And so now they're 13, and the boy cat apparently has what they think is lung cancer, and then like another like brain disease of some kind that kind of like short circuits the system. And so he just kind of in the last like 6 months, like those two things are basically like racking his body, and so he doesn't have that much longer. And so yeah, and so they're just kind of like the last month or so I've been dealing with sick cat, and so now he's on steroids. My cat is on steroids, which is kind of a weird thing. Yeah, it's I mean, you know, it was I could see it coming down the pike, but it just kind of happened like all of a sudden, like a lot faster, and just kind of accelerated faster than we were expecting, and it was kind of a challenging time because it's been just such a hard year. So, but he's such a Buddha cat. Like, he's still happy and purring and smiling. He's like, he can smile. He's always just super content Buddha cat. And such an interesting blessing, even in these last, like even in these last, like especially even I suppose in these the last days, is like learning how to be a Buddha all the way through all the way through to the end. Oh yeah. Oh well, thank you for hanging out. I appreciate that. I never quite know how these Saturday night chats are gonna go. Yeah, it's I mean really quite amazing. And that's what I think that's why I always end up with animal companions, because they're just kind of like these really interesting little like spirit creatures that hang out with you, keep you company, and they're really their own unique beings that it's really just quite just like existentially speaking, it's really quite fascinating. Humans too, you know, like we're just like when you really think about it, like what? Like what is this like sentience, you know, like what this sentient creature that we are it's like how what and how is it that we got to be like humans and that we're not a cat or a dog or a mountain lion or a cow? Yeah, it's also kind of like I'm making good on my promise to take care of him all the way through, because that's when I choose to acquire animal companions, I make the commitment to them, like to their whole life, unless it's like a very specific kind of arrangement where I know that it's not going to be their whole life, then I usually have a plan. I know, right? Jesus, it's so long. Yeah, it's so long. I'm looking forward to the day when I have an apartment or a house that just does not have any pet hair anywhere. Not on my clothes, not on the floor, not on my pillow, and not on my coat. None. I'm still not quite sure that day will ever come. But it's something to strive for. Yeah. So, what else has been interesting for this week for me? Well, I have been making this really interesting concoction of kind of like a little sauté dish that I add to other things, either rice or pasta. So it's been sliced almonds and garlic and mushrooms if I have them, and tempeh if I have it, and sauteing that in sesame seed oil and olive oil, and then kind of throwing in whatever else makes sense at the time, and sauteing that, and then adding that to like some rice or pasta, and then adding some more whatever I feel like adding to it, and then putting salad, like sunflower sprouts is what I put in earlier, and some other sprouts. I work from home right now, and so, which has its perks and is also like really annoying because my office is basically right over there, and so like work is always like, hey, you know that thing that you still gotta do? I know it's 7 p.m. but you could still get it done. Yeah, so I've been struggling with like setting work home boundaries, like trying to keep things nice and tidy. And I don't work full time either, I work part time, so which is I think better for, I don't have a separate office space in my house. Actually I basically have like a portion of my dining room set aside for doing work. Yeah, I mean it's definitely like, it's certainly a blessing for this year, and in general it's been a blessing for me because as a single parent, like it's really helpful to be able to work from home and manage all the various components of living. But the kind of the downside of it is that it starts like the boundaries blur a little bit too much, and then you have to really be I guess maybe I have to in my world I really have to be firm about how I set my work and home boundaries, so it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, it will make you insane. Yeah, so I've had to, really kind of like confine my workspace to a certain area of the dining room, and then just like not use that computer when I'm not working. And luckily I have a computer that I can devote to just working. But I'm glad that I'm only working part-time, because then I can just work in the afternoons, and then I like make sure that I'm not letting that time bleed over into like the mornings or the evenings. Yeah, I mean, the commute's amazing. And we have the best coffee at my office. Oh man, it's so good. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of blessings about it, and like being able to just take a walk whenever. Yeah, but I'm definitely looking forward to the day when I can have a house or space enough in my apartment where I can devote a whole like room or half a room to an office for working on projects that aren't my projects. Like I really have to even separate like my own creative projects and that project workspace from projects I'm doing for other people, because I don't like how that blends either. It doesn't feel good at all, and it kind of dampens my creative inspiration. So I'm really looking forward to the day when I can have like at least half of an office space devoted to projects that I do for money for other people. Put it over there, like corded off. Or, ideally I would be able to make money from my own creative projects and drive an income that way that I could sufficiently live on, and then like that would be, of course, the ideal. So I don't have to work on projects for other people. That would be like amazing. Still hoping that will happen at some point. I was going to work on this short documentary for the local television station, because they have this cool thing that if you're a city resident, you can use the TV studio to create projects, and they help you. You should find space to do your personal projects. It's super important. Like, stake a claim somewhere. Like, that's the personal project space. Nobody can touch it except for you. And you can't do anything else in that. Like, it's got to be your personal project. Like, don't do any other kind of work there. Just personal project stuff. But so I was gonna before the pandemic, I had like this cool documentary project kind of mapped out in my head. Not necessarily mapped out very well on paper, but I was gonna aw, thank you. Like, I know that's like a really cool thing. I'm still so new to these platforms. I'm still not even quite sure exactly what that means, but I know that's really awesome. So thank you for that, the hearts. Yeah, you should either reclaim it or like just create a whole nother space and like create another personal space for projects, or boot the workspace to another space, like create another workspace and reclaim it. Do something like that's what I recommend, because it's super important, I think, to have that creative space that's just purely your own. And I was going to do this documentary project before the pandemic, before at least, I mean, everybody kind of like was getting clues like in December, January, February, like, oh shit, what's this? And so I had set out this whole plan to do this, not a long documentary, like maybe 10 or 15 minutes, just kind of like getting my feet wet in how to do a documentary project. And it was going to be on affordable housing in the city where I live. And then the pandemic hit, and I'm like, how the hell is somebody supposed to go about making a documentary like, in the middle of a pandemic? Like, I could change the whole like documentary to be like about, you know, the pandemic, and I kind of, in a way, did that with like just my own like live streaming kind of live memoir, I guess, of yeah. Yeah, Periscope's pretty cool. I am so glad I found it. It's like one of the cooler platforms I think that's out there. And so I finally like said to the TV studio, I'm like, this is just like a really like challenging year to try to do a documentary. Could we just like reset the whole production plan and like reschedule it? And so they just rescheduled it to start in January of 2021 and go on for, you know, like 3 months, and I can extend it if I want. And so I was like, oh, finally, like, okay, like I can breathe easy that I didn't make hardly any progress on that project, like at all, other than to think of creative ways to actually do a documentary in the middle of quarantine. How do you even do that? So I came up with some like interesting ideas of like, how can I get around this and like do it differently, and especially watching other people do like different things with Zoom meetings and then like live streaming Zoom meetings, or like asking people to like submit statements or like video recordings, you know, talking about whatever the topic is, and then you use that material, incorporate that recorded, like that self-recorded video or audio, and then use that material. So there's ways to do it, but you know, it's like still like a different kind of approach. And so I was just glad that they were like, oh yeah, like you can just do this next year. Like, oh, thank God. Because this is the first time that I'm gonna create this documentary and submit it to the TV station, and so if I don't produce this first project, like they're not gonna let me. They're like, oh yeah, you're gonna produce the second project. You never delivered on the first project, so I've got to deliver. So so I have that slated for like January to May, I think, and then I have a couple of classes that I just submitted to, like just like 1 or 2 night classes that I submitted to teach at the community college. And I scheduled all those for August. I'm like, all right, I just need to go easier on myself. Like I can't like pile up scheduling things because I'm already like just feeling overwhelmed and stressed out all the time. Like I don't need to make it any worse. Yeah. Oh, let's see. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I've been doing in a very like informal way. And I've been doing that with like this format. I've been like it's kind of documenting quarantine, kind of just me documenting my own life. So it's like partially a memoir and partially documenting what we're going through this year. And I've just been really relaxed about it for me, like to just don't make this a stressful thing. Like mostly I just need to like figure out my technology so I can actually do the live stream, and then figure out how to like have a decent chat while I'm doing the tech side of things, and get it like streaming well enough that I can just actually engage in the chat a little better. And so yeah, it's been a very like organic process of figuring out what works and what like other people are doing and how they're making it work, and like kind of what are the norms with doing these like basically like these live stream chats. And so I have this, you know, essentially I'm going to call this Saturday night show. I used to play guitar more often, and then I got sick, and so I stopped playing guitar so much, and now I'm just very unrehearsed, so I don't do it as often, but I call it When the Mood Strikes Midnight, because I do it Saturday nights whenever I feel like it's time to go live, and usually not before 10:30, and usually not later than 11:30 or so. And so I have this whole like really great collection now of this Saturday night chat that I've been doing since like May. And Some of it's, you know, pretty boring, pretty mundane, pretty much like me just being like, I don't know what to talk about, so I guess I'll talk about, I made toast. I run it through, I have a desktop software called OBS Studio, so I use OBS Studio and then I run it to the platform that way. I don't know if that's actually like, Periscope is still a little bit confusing to me, like exactly what they call producer and what they don't. So I don't know that I am. I don't think that I'm using the producer. I think I'm just running it through the OBS Studio and it's like piping over to Periscope that way. And so that's why like the framing that I have is like, I think on the Periscope, like if you're looking at it on your phone, it ends up being like this very like small, kind of a small frame because it's not the portrait view, it's more of a landscape view. So that's kind of one of the shortcomings, I suppose, of doing it this way to Periscope, but I really like the outcome. And so I always record it to my YouTube channel. So I have on my YouTube channel, that's where my archive is, that I then download and make sure I have a local copy because who knows what YouTube will do. But I have this really great collection of, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, it ends up being landscape. Can you tilt your phone and like get the full landscape, or does it do a weird thing and like landscape it weird even when you tilt the landscape mode? Can you get the full landscape when you tilt your phone? Because I'm not sure. But I have, I think this is episode 24. Done this 24 times this year. So I think I've actually like managed to figure some stuff out, and I have definitely gotten more comfortable just going live. Like it took a lot for me to do that at first. Like, actually what it took was quarantine boredom, like exceptional boredom. And I was like, oh, what is this live button on Facebook? Like, what does that do? Let's try this. Oh, okay. Oh, that's good. Well, so it's not like a complete wash with the, that's good. I'm glad that I'll turn landscape that way. Yeah, so my first live stream actually of this year is me like exploring when Facebook offered the live stream function, which was new. Like I had my Facebook turned off for months and months, and then I turned it on in like April because of the quarantine. Oh, yeah, actually I kind of have too. It took me a while. I was a slow adopter for vertical video, but it's actually kind of neat. And so my first live stream of the year basically is me like hitting the Facebook Live button like one early morning when I was just woken up, and was like messy hair and all, and me like looking at my PC camera, which is like, like the actual like laptop camera and the little camera that comes stock is just like, complete crap. And so it's just like this like really fuzzy video of me, all messy hair, just woke up, just kind of like looking at the screen, like trying to figure out what it's doing. And then and then I had like also set up another camera, except for it didn't use that camera. I just kept using my, the computer camera. I don't actually have a Snapchat, but thank you. If you go, let's see. If you go to, I don't know, I do have a place for donations, Patreon, and then just PayPal. But if you go to I have an Instagram, which is @dawn.earth, like there's dawn.earth, my website, but like all the links on my website for some reason don't quite work well. So you can try my website, or you can try @dawn.earth on Instagram, and might be able to find a way to donate there. But thank you, I really appreciate that. That's very sweet. And I should probably make it easier. Yeah. I should, yeah, so, and on my YouTube channel, actually, there's like a bunch of links too, to like different, like my Patreon and some other stuff. No. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to mean. I mean, if you want to hire me as a photographer, then maybe I would, you know, you can hire me as a photographer, then, you know, we can talk. But I don't think that's what you're asking. I think you're asking something else, and that's probably the answer is no. Oh my. Oh, internet. What an interesting place to be. So, anyway, to conclude, that first live stream, yeah, the first live stream was just like this, like, really, I mean, basically like this poetic 24-second, like, stream of me just kind of, like, looking at my camera and, like, I'm like, oh, it's like, it's totally the wrong camera, and that's all I say, and then I end it, and then it's just like this, I just love that 24-second segment, and yeah, I don't think that that's like a thing that I'm gonna do. I don't think so, but I'm sure there are probably others that may, but I'm not one of them. What a weird world we're in. Criminy. Like, at what point should it, I mean, you know, yeah. Yeah, sorry. So, yeah, this is what you have to kind of like contend with while, yeah. Yeah, this is, I mean, this is kind of like, you know, this is the, you know, this is what you have to contend with when you decide to hold space online in any kind of live capacity, is like weird shit like that. Like, what? Okay. Yeah, actually, I think, you know, I did, actually. That was, it's pretty impressive, in fact, that I've made it this, I mean, it's been a good while, in fact. And I think that it's partly because I talk about, like, stuff that's not easy to, like, segue into those kinds of weird spaces, but it's also that, I think I'm often boring. Or at least, well, I think I used to be. I think I might still be. I'm not sure, actually. But that was also the impetus for bringing the framing back. How do I describe that? To bring the framing back, so that, like, give it to, like, a little less of the up closer. I have not been on Periscope very long at all. Like, I just found it 2 months ago, maybe? Hardly 2 months ago. And I don't even know how I found it exactly, but it is the best. I love this app. It is, it's so fun. And I think what I liked about it, like, after, you know, because I was playing with different apps where you can do video, and, like, I played with TikTok a little bit. That was fun. Still fun for, like, doing the, you know, 15 or 60 second. Like, they've got a lot of, like, cool stuff that you can do with making videos. So that was fun. And then I tried Twitch, which is also interesting, but that's really hard to get any kind of, like, traction on. But Periscope is, like, super fun. Like, it's like, because it's easy to go live for just like a minute or two, or even or way longer. Like, it's all okay. Like, it's all, like, part of the norm. Like, other platforms, it's like there's, like, certain norms of, like, length. And so I really appreciate that I can do just kind of like these really quick, short, like 2 or 5 or 7 minute videos. And then also like 2 hours if I want. Oh, hey Will. I'm not sure I don't know what Big Brother is. I don't watch a lot of like regular TV. I watch a lot of Netflix. I'm like catching up on like years worth of television. All in like, binge sessions. Like, oh, like I guess I'll watch 8 seasons of this show this month. Yeah, it's just, I think it's just great. Do you also stream then, Steve? Are you also a streamer? Like, if you've been on here for 5 years, I can't imagine that you haven't streamed. Like, you must have by now. I think, is that supposed to be, is HRU, is that how are you? How are you? I'm doing particularly fine, thank you. How are you? I'm reminded of a George Carlin skit. Fine. I'm just fine. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, and then there's people are doing some really interesting things. I love the folks that get to like broadcast from the coastal areas. Like, there's a few folks that I follow who broadcast from like the southern coast of England and like over by, I think that's like County Devon, and like over by Wales, and I think maybe somebody also that's broadcasting from Ireland. It's so beautiful. Yeah, isn't that funny? Like, that's actually a big part of why I've been doing this year too, is like reminding people that I am here as a person in the world, and I exist like for real. And have like a whole like, manner of engagement as like, someone that really likes to be social in person. And being social in person just feels like such a far away enterprise. Oh yeah, I haven't done that yet because I've been afraid to, because of, as you saw just a few minutes ago, of that weird request. I've been afraid to go that far just yet. Till I have gained my confidence of fielding that kind of moderation. You know I'm a weirdo, thank you. I mean, I assume that you're talking to me. I am, so here's the thing. I am also multi-streaming to a couple different platforms. So I'm actually streaming to Periscope, but also to Twitch. And I usually don't have much of a Twitch audience, but sometimes I do. But what I haven't done is I haven't put my chat stream on the screen, so no one else can actually see the chat stream. Yeah, so somebody on Twitch just called me a weirdo. Like, oh, I do things very differently here on my channel than most folks on Twitch, as far as I can tell. Yeah, so I can get kind of like a little overwhelmed with like fielding all the technicalities while also trying to like have a coherent chat while also like maintaining a sense of presence on the screen. And so I haven't done the live calls yet because that will quickly like, I'll just feel overwhelmed quickly, I think. But I do plan actually on doing that at some point once I've kind of gotten a little bit more grounded in the enterprise of it all. Yeah, people say weird shit, man. But so I thank you for like being a real person in in the world and having like a genuine conversation. It's so hard to come by these days. It's just such a strange place. I remember like doing like when I got my first computer way back when, I guess when I was like 20. Or no, that wasn't my first computer. It was one of like the first, it was the first computer I actually did a lot of writing on. Oh, that's cool. Oh, maybe maybe I'll ask to join as a caller, and then I can like figure it out from that side, and then I'll not be so intimidated to do it from my side as the host. But I remember like one of the computers that I got, and like first doing like the chats, like the what are they? There was like a name for the chat rooms then. I forget exactly what it was, but it was like all the chat rooms were 4chan. Like you couldn't get away from it. And it's such a long time ago now. And I think about like the dial-up internet. The sound. Although I love the sound of dial-up internet, the connecting sound. It's like it's the coolest sound. I feel like I should figure out a way to get dial-up internet just so I could get a recording of that sound, like my own recording, not like. I mean, I'm sure there's recordings that I could use as like stock audio. But it's such a cool sound. That would be fun, actually, to use that as part of a show setup and make people think that you're using dial-up internet. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's, I generally have been pretty like event oriented in the past. This year I think has marked like it's been a significant departure for me to like go live with like basically nothing going on other than like me talking about really mundane things. Like, and then be like, why doesn't anybody want to talk to me in my live streams? I was like just telling them that I made rice that I got from Kroger. Don't get rice from Kroger. Not the Kroger brand. You can get the other brand. Do not get Kroger brand rice. Like you just don't do. I mean, you can, I guess, if you want to like stock a cabinet with some rice, but it's just not worth it. It is not worth $1. Yeah, but so I've just like worked through just basically pushing myself to figure out how to host a show and say things that are interesting that other people would be at least entertained by, or engaged enough to stick around and have a chat. And as someone who spends a lot of time in solitude and doesn't necessarily maintain like a lot of like conversational capacity in my daily life, like this is actually kind of a little bit like painful for me to figure out how to host a show that I continue to talk about things that are like interesting to more than just myself. But yeah, Kroger is like really specific to, I don't know, maybe it's just like specific to like Southeast Michigan. I'm in Michigan. I'm not even sure what the limits are on Kroger, but there's definitely, well, there's fewer than there used to be, but there's definitely like a lot of them in this region. Yeah, I guess the moral of that story though is like if you are going to buy rice, get the good rice. Like indulge in your rice. Get the stuff that's good, because it's good. I got this like wild rice blend that is actually much faster to cook than I gave it credit for, and I just really very recently realized that, and I was like, oh, I could have been using this whole time, but no. Yeah, so I've another way that I entertain myself is thinking that at some point I might somehow manage to own and run a small bar where I have, like very small, like like a corner bar or something, or like a tiki bar, like very very small, like, and just like have like a really cool setup where I can make a lot of different drinks that are, you know, fun to make, and then and maybe not a lot, but like kind of like a set, like a decent cocktail menu, and then some like companion dishes, small dishes, like tapas, I think is what it's called, and just have like this really great setup of a small bar that I'm, you know, that I own and run, and have like at least one like really experienced bartender on the roster who helps me run the bar, and then just kind of like create my own menu of drinks and dishes to go with them, and small, again, like small dishes, and like not like a huge, don't need a huge kitchen, like small, decent sized kitchen. It's not like tiny, to go along with the small corner bar. And there's just something about that that is so appealing to me. Like it just would be a nice like daily life routine to be social at my place, and then of course somewhere near a coast of some kind, because I've spent too many years not being by a coast. Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's really just such a festive, like, jovial atmosphere. It's just you know, it's just like really like socially rewarding. Of course, I mean, it's got to be the right kind of like atmosphere and vibe, and you got to run it well, I think, to maintain a good social atmosphere. And I just really want to do that at some point. Yeah, that's, well, yeah, that's yeah, definitely like a big risk. It's like a occupational hazard, really. But there's actually a bar owner in the town nearby who is also, he also runs a basically kind of like a blues club, where his band hosts the blues jams every Thursday night, and I think they still do. They've been doing it for like years and years. So he owns the bar, and he also plays lead guitar in his band that hosts the open mic jam sessions, which is just like, I don't think it gets better than that. Like for that lifestyle, like that's like the pinnacle for me. Like awesome, like rocking good time. Oh wow, yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. Wow, so you're like very familiar with that kind of environment. That's like at some point I'm hoping, I mean, I don't necessarily have to own and run the bar, but I definitely want to like find that time and space again in life where there's that kind of social environment where there's a whole network of folks that know each other and musicians, and it's just a good time. And of course, at least one pool table has got to be in the house, because I don't understand how bars get by without a single pool table. Some of them do. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the ways I entertain myself. It's like, oh, well, maybe one day I'll do that. But regardless, I could still come up with a menu, and so I do. I'm still going to come up with a menu of both the dishes and the cocktails. And so that's the nice part about that, is I can do a lot of that work at home, like figuring out the menus. Yeah, thanks. At some point, like when I'm ready, like I want to do like some more, probably a good bit of traveling once I figure out what to do with these cocktails before I make a commitment to have a, you know, to run a bar, because that's definitely like another kind of commitment. Yeah, definitely. Pool table. So it's got to be big enough for like the corner bar, decent sized kitchen, and a pool table, and a stage. Okay, this is getting bigger. Maybe it'll be like an outdoor environment where like I can share the stage space with like some other like local bars or businesses. It'd be like total party atmosphere. Yeah, this is how I entertain myself. Yeah, but definitely some traveling first before I make that commitment. Like figure out how to do with the cocktails, travel, then bar. Yeah, it's my, maybe I'll call it Cardinal in the Thicket. Or that's either that's the name of something. I'm not really sure exactly. I mean, it's the name of this episode. It's also the name of a photograph in a short 20-second, actually I think it's a 19-second video, but maybe it's also the name of a cocktail that I need to figure out how to make. And then, I mean, that could be a bar name, Cardinal. I think it's a little wordy. So, this is the, yeah, I'm really smitten with the phrase. It's definitely going to be the name of a few things, probably. Like, it already kind of is. Like, and it will continue to be. What was I going to say? Let's see. Oh, I've forgotten already what I was looking up information on the Chinese New Year, because I was working on some writing that I did in 2017, and one of the stories that I was writing mentioned the New Year, and then I was looking up, well, what year, like, because you know, the Chinese zodiac, the 12 animals, the 12-year zodiac, and I was looking up what year that was, and I've already forgotten. I think it was the year of the rooster. But we're heading into the year of the ox this next year, which seems like it just seems notable to me for some reason. I'm not sure. I think that there's like some superstition that the year of the ox is very fortuitous, very lucky, very fortunate, and so I just like that feeling, like, oh yes, like we're heading into like some like good fortuitous times. Like, that sounds lovely. Oh, good. It's a nice radical departure from what all this weirdness has done this year. But 2022 is the year of the tiger, I think. Yeah, pretty sure. And that's the year that's my year, is the year of the tiger. And what was funny about that is I suddenly remembered, like, oh yeah, like, for the longest time when I was younger, I believed that my Chinese zodiac year was the year of the rabbit, because I was born in late January. And I didn't understand the Lunar New Year cycle is different from the Gregorian calendar year. And so for the longest time I thought my Chinese zodiac sign was the year of the rabbit, and I believed that for like a super long time. And then one day I like just realized, like, oh, like that's not actually true. Like it actually goes by like the Lunar New Year, and in that case I was born in the year of the tiger, and I didn't know that this whole time, and I just felt lied to. And then I thought, wow, that's pretty awesome. Like, who doesn't want to be born in the year of a tiger? That's a pretty good, like, that's a pretty cool gift from the universe. It's like, kind of, you know, I don't know, like waking up to an interesting truth, I guess, you know, as far as zodiac goes. Which is, you know, really just kind of a fun way to interpret the world. And so, so I'm pretty sure it's like 2022. And now that it's November 22nd, that's actually what reminded me of it. And I thought, well, that's like such a nice, like, even numbered year to be the year of the tiger, and maybe I should prioritize my writing to be ready to publish in 2022, because that'd be a pretty cool timestamp on some writing. Yeah. So, back to my literary notes. So another one of the books that I'm reading, because I read several at a time, some of them pretty slowly, some of them much faster. Yeah, I don't know, actually don't really know a lot about the year of the rat. I know that it's not like, you know, it's not as like boastable. Like, nobody really boasts about it, but it's, I mean, I'm sure there's like some really cool things about it. I just don't, I don't think I don't remember anything. But, yeah, so this other book that I'm reading is The Art of Slow Writing, and it's one of the best books I've ever read about writing. And she talks, like, well, her chapters are very, again, like, kind of like the Sylvia Plath book, like, very, like, short, like, very readable. Like, it's easy to just sit down and read a chapter. Like, you don't have to devote a lot of time to finish a chapter, which is just really nice. And each chapter is devoted to, like, these different insights of how to go about the art of slow writing and to, like, allow yourself that process. And one of the last chapters I read was basically like asking yourself, like, what's in your drawer, like what writing do you have kind of just tucked away in the drawer or wherever that you have forgotten about and is actually probably worth looking at and seeing what you've got and working with it. And so I was like, oh, like this is actually a really excellent prompt, because I've been writing pretty diligently almost every day since 2017, since January 2017. And so I've got, like, racked up, like, quite a bit of material and semi-organized. Organized enough that I can go back into it and pull out what I want and then kind of like reshape like how it needs to be organized. And so I started doing that in the last week or two, and I went back and I like just kind of like surfaced 3 distinct pieces and started to craft them into basically essays or like short stories and the creative nonfiction, most of it. And I like realized some things about myself, like how I write, and like that I'm actually kind of writing 2 different works at the same time when I go about my daily writing. And so like I was able to like kind of pull out stuff that's good for probably like a book chapter, like content that's a little bit more like denser, and I'm gonna have to like really work at it to make it like a more complete piece. And then like pulling that out from these like 2,000 or 3,000 word, sometimes more or less, pieces, daily writings, then like pulling out that like kind of that more detailed stuff, the denser stuff, and then seeing what's left as like more of a poetic flow of essay or you know, story or whatever. And that's been really satisfying to do. And so I'm like, oh my god, like I have so many of these. Okay, I have so many essays and hopefully like so much book chapter content already written that I didn't really fully give myself credit for, which I think still kind of remains to be seen, because I've got like 3 years worth of writings to go through and like kind of sift through it all, see what it actually has and what other writing I actually still need to do to make it more complete. And I'm just so glad that I did that. And it was all like, the prompt was this chapter that just asked, like, you know, it talked a little bit about like stuff that she had found that she'd written years before and like kind of put it away thinking that it was just like a piece that wasn't going to work, and then discovered that she needed to kind of go back to it for this other like memoir piece that she was writing, and it worked. And then like what she was able to get from that piece that she had kind of like given up on actually worked for this other thing that she was working on. And so like that was the whole thing, is like, what's in your drawer? And so I just like so grateful for like the books that people write when they're, I mean, it's just like such useful things that people talk about sometimes and write about, and like so simple, like so easy. Like that was just like probably like a 4 or 5 page chapter, and it just like transformed my process of like it gave me that push that I needed to go back and look through the earlier 2017 stuff. And now that it's like enough time has passed, there's like some distance that I've gotten from that, so it's not as like, I don't know, it's more of like its own thing, like in its own time, and it's more separate from now, and I think it's easier to work with it in that way. So now I'm going to go through basically everything that I've written since then, which is a lot of not, I mean, it's a lot of like actual like writing work, but it's also like, it can be emotionally tedious, so we'll see how far. Oh, let's see. Yeah, exactly. Like you put it away and then you come back to it later and get a fresh view. Stephen King also writes about doing that too, in his book on writing on writing, and he says like put it away for a full year, and then take it out and have a look and see what you have, what you think of it. Do I think that AI can replace artists? Someone asks. Super Hamburger on Twitch is asking me, do I think that AI can replace artists? I don't think that it can replace artists. I think it can augment what artists do. I think it can be its own thing. I think it can add to the artistic world. But I don't think that it can replace artists because art in its truest form is really, you know, a human perspective that's like that, and that human is remarking about something, whether it's like sophisticated or not. Like it's like that there is a very grounded humanity in the work, and AI can perhaps replicate some of that or create something that's very similar, but it's fundamentally different, and it can have its own value as AI created art, which I actually have seen some interesting things that are similar to what you're talking about, but I don't think quite exactly what you're talking about. I think that it could unknowingly replace artists created by art, or art created by humans, and the appreciator, the viewer, may not know that, and I think that that's a significant lie that should not be. Well, that brings up some ethical questions about like aesthetic, like the value of the aesthetic experience, appreciating the art, the ethics of the viewer, of allowing the viewer to have a true experience of that work, of that art. Oh, thanks, Steve. I really think it's awesome that you hung out this long. You have a good night too. Thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate it. So, cheers. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you know, yeah, so I guess that's what I have to say about AI created art, artificial intelligence creating art. I think, you know, it's a fundamentally different thing, and it should be the viewer. Well, I mean, I suppose the viewer at some point should know who created that art. Like maybe they don't know it at first, because that's kind of part of the experiment or the artistic approach, is to like that person doesn't know that it was created by artificial intelligence versus created by a human, or another animal for that matter. But then I think that they should know at some point that that's what it was. At like some point that it's the ethical thing is for that person to learn it's how it was created. And of course, only the folks who are truly dedicated to understanding art would actually take the time to find out that difference. A lot of folks don't really even read the placards that say who the artist was or is of a given work. I am someone that will generally look for the author of a work and make sure that I like label my files as such. Like even earlier tonight I downloaded a really beautiful photograph of the East River in New York City, and as soon as I downloaded it, I like relabeled it as the photographer's name and the year that it was published, because Lord knows I will forget, 2 minutes later. And of course you can't really discern that kind of stuff from artist signatures most of the time. So yeah, I think knowing the author of the work is important. So I do not think that it can replace it. It can be its own thing, but it is fundamentally different. But great question, actually. That is a great question. And so I am coming up, I think, on the length of this run. I have... Yeah, no, sure, thanks for your question. That's like... that was like a really great question to answer. I mean, that's really the kind of stuff that I like to think about and to talk about. Whether like in here in these live streams or in my own writing or just in general, like going to art museums and looking at art, visual art, of all things. Like, it'd be nice to go to a museum and look at visual art. I know there are some museums that are still like allowing visitors, but I haven't really gone, I think, since last year. And the last one I went to, well, one of the last ones I went to was the Museum of Modern Art in Toledo, which is an excellent museum, and I highly recommend it. We have some really great stuff and some Van Goghs in there. Really like striking Van Gogh work there. Yeah, and I want to say Matisse, but I actually don't think that Matisse is in that. I can't remember. But it was that one. It was the Toledo Museum of Modern Art, and then I think that's what they call it, which is actually like kind of like under recognized as one of the better museums across the country. And then another one at the University of Michigan main campus. They've got a pretty decent museum of art there too, and they've got some Picassos in there that are awesome. And they also have some great like modern art from some New York artists and like the abstract expressionism type, like big, huge, massive works, paintings that are like a full body experience to like just look at this massive painting that is, you know, abstract, so it's like your interpretation and experience of it is very unique to you and what it pulls from you. And God, it just feels so good to just walk around a museum and do that. And I cannot wait to do that again. Like, and you know, like casually, like very relaxed, not like all uptight, like, oh my god, is this museum visit gonna kill me? Yeah. Well, I'm gonna call it, I think, a night. But thank you so much for joining me this evening, and I will go live again next Saturday night, usually around 10:30 or 11 o'clock Eastern time, sometimes a little later, but whenever the mood strikes midnight, as it were. And yeah, and if you're inclined, you know, follow my channel there on the Twitch or the Periscope, or even on YouTube, which is somewhere I'm on in the YouTube universe, kind of like obscured into the nether. All right, well, thank you for being real, for being you, for being part of this world we live in, this online social occasion. Cheers.